It was nice to have a children's message again this morning. We just need to set a louder alarm clock to get them up early so they can come to church every Sunday. I was going to talk a little bit today about one of my favorite topics. And I know we've heard a little bit about this in the last month or so. It seems like the tide is rolling in and it's that time again to talk about prosperity. Through depression and recession, through good times and bad, through doubt and flood, unity has proclaimed prosperity, prayed with people for prosperity, and demonstrated prosperity. The foundation of the unity work is the belief in God as our one source of all, the healer of all ills of the body, the provider of all needs to our outer self. Unity has helped people make their prosperity break through. So it's been a mission of unity as an organization since its very inception by Charles and Merle Fillmore to teach the message of prosperity. Just as the healing breakthrough comes when the connection is made with God as our life source, so prosperity breakthrough is made when we make a connection with the one source. God is our source, and abundance is our nature. That's what our affirmation says when we take our offering. The connecting link between us and God is right here in our mind. That's where God does his most powerful work. He is only unable to do that when we shut that mind down and we create roadblocks for him. When we don't agree with his intention that we should be prosperous and successful. It makes it very hard, although not impossible, for him to work in our lives. The flow of prosperity starts inside of us. That's the nature of God. He works within each and every one of us because his presence is here. The mighty river of substance of God begins its flow as a very small stream, or sometimes even a single rich idea. That's where prosperity comes from. It's from rich ideas. And prosperity happens when those ideas mature and grow and become a way of life. What is a rich idea? It is any idea that engenders an increase in our life. That's what prosperity is. It produces conditions of well-being. Any idea that brings prosperity to us and to others is a rich idea. We cannot prove the law of prosperity without first having an idea. We must think about it and create it for it to come to fruition in our lives. That's our responsibility. It's like I told the young people this morning. We have to have our intention set in agreement with God's desire for our life. Everywhere we turn, we see God's message of success and prosperity as being his desire for our lives. And the great possibilities that can work in our lives for success come directly out of our desire to accept God's message and allow his plan to work for us. We have to start with the idea which comes within inside of us, and we have to allow that idea to grow. Recession, depression, inflation. How do we cope with these things? We turn around, every time we turn around, we're reading bad news in the newspaper or seeing bad news on the television. about the stock market falling on its face, or about some other economic disaster that happens in our lives or in our world, the world around us. How can we be successful with those things? We have to recognize that these are all man-made conditions. God did not create any of these conditions in our life. They're all through the fault and failure of man's plans for purpose. God's provision of supply and support is that we will be successful and prosperous. In the midst of changing times and conditions, we can maintain a sense of security. We can feel prosperous, and we can demonstrate supply for our needs. We can refuse to let fear color our thinking and color our world. A few weeks ago, I gave a message on fear. Fear is a powerful idea that can take over our lives and keep us from functioning and breathing and working and doing the things that we know that we need to do to live successful and prosperous lives. It can affect our health. It can affect our relationships with other people. But it's the fear, the idea that comes from within ourselves because for whatever reason we don't believe or we don't accept God's provision and supply for us or for our health. Unity teaches, too, that prosperity is not the result of praying to get something. So many people view the idea of prosperity as an automatic process. Here, I'm going to give you $1. Now what do I get back in return? But God's purpose in our lives is that we share His love and His plan and His purpose for other people to be successful in their lives. I don't recall reading anywhere in the Bible where it says that God's plan or purpose in our lives was that we should get a reward for doing the things that we know we should do, the right thing. We have abilities that are needed. God gives us abilities and talents that we can and should use to create a successful purpose for our lives. But we have a responsibility to do those things. We cannot sit back and allow the world to pass us by and then wonder where the prosperity went because we were too busy looking for something that wasn't there. We had it all along. Some time ago, I told the story about ships that used to sail in the old world, sailing ships, sailing to South America. And they reached an area off the coast of Brazil that's called the doldrums. And that area is an area that's unique in that the wind currents almost cease sometimes. And these great massive sailing ships would come to a dead stop in the water. Their supply was a finite supply. They had only so much food and so much, more importantly, so much fresh water. And when those supplies ran out, they would literally sometimes sit there and starve to death or die of thirst. Occasionally another ship would come along and they would plead with these other ships to give them fresh water. And the other ships would respond and send a message back saying, lower your bucket over the side and bring in all of the fresh water that you need. And they would lower a bucket over the side of the ship and bring it up and taste it, and sure enough, it was fresh water. They didn't know how that could possibly be. They thought in the middle of the ocean, too far to see land, and yet they were surrounded by fresh water. Well, that's the way it is in our lives. We are surrounded by God's provision and supply, and sometimes we don't get it because we don't try. Sometimes we don't get it because we create roadblocks in the way of our getting it. Our fear, or our desire to have something else, or our concentration on the reward we'll get if we're generous and we give. But God's provision is all around us. just as it was for those ships. I won't leave you hanging. For those of you who didn't hear the story before, the doldrums is an area off of Brazil where the mighty Amazon River flows into the ocean. The Amazon River is so big and so powerful and pushes such a volume of water out of the mouth of the river into the ocean that for as much as 100 miles away, the water in the ocean is fresh because of that volume of water being pushed out by the Amazon River. It displaces the seawater. It comes out at such a volume, it creates a wall and pushes the seawater away. And so it's fresh water. And yet people died thinking they needed fresh water, and they were sitting in the middle of it. Well, sometimes people in our world today die too, because they don't recognize that they're sitting in the middle of this great sea of prosperity that God has provided for us. His ideas for prosperity are all around us. He requires, as with so many of the things that God promises to us in His Word, He requires that we do certain things. And one of the things that He requires is that we get up and get off our behind and step forward and share His love and be responsible for putting into practice the principles of prosperity and success that He details for us in His Word. Part of that message of prosperity can be found in this scripture right here on the wall. And Jesus said, "At any time you pray believing in my name, you shall receive." And that's always God's promise to us. When you come to me in prayer, believing that you will receive, or that you have received the success you seek, you will be successful. So many people tie the concept of prosperity to the idea of money. I used to teach accounting at college-level accounting courses in hospitality management school. And it was so hard to try to teach the concept of accounting to students who were not familiar with accounting principles. Most students, when they think about accounting, always want to think in terms of pluses and minuses, or addition and subtraction. But the concept of accounting is based upon accrual, and it's a broad-based plan. And I used to discourage them from trying to apply the simple rules of mathematics to accounting. Yes, when you add something over here, it is a plus. But in accounting, if you add something over here, you have to take away something over here, because it's a two-sided ledger. And if that ledger is going to balance and tell a true and accurate story, you must have both sides of the ledger. Now, there are more simple methods of accounting than that method, but that is the method of accounting used by virtually all business in the world today. Excuse me. And people think in the simple terms of pluses and minuses instead of in the overall picture. And God's created an overall picture for us, and we need to pay attention to that. We need to recognize that the blessings that we get are there. They're automatic. God said, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you these things. I'm going to give you work to create revenue or income for yourself. But you have a responsibility to share that with other people. You need to be a blessing to someone else because God is a blessing to you. And it's a circle. It really is. God blesses you, you bless somebody else, they bless somebody else, they bless somebody else blesses you. It's a big circle. And it's always in motion, unless it stops at you. So when you want to think about prosperity, think about the blessings that God has given you that you can share with somebody else. The easiest trigger for you to get God's blessing is for you to give somebody else something. And that's important for us to remember. We all have opportunities every day of our lives to give and to share something. It may be a rich idea. It may be a couple of dollars for gas. It may be giving money to the church so they can continue to operate. It may be helping somebody to pay a medical bill so that they can get the medical care that they need. It may be cooking dinner for someone who can't get out of bed to cook dinner for themselves. It may be helping somebody do laundry because they're not capable of doing laundry for themselves, or they don't have the facility to do laundry for themselves. There are many ways that we can help and give and share. And we need to open our eyes and our hearts to all of those possibilities. And when we do that, God will bless us in return with his blessings in an abundance, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing is what the Bible tells us. And that's what happens. It isn't a dollar for dollar proposition. If you give somebody $1, you're not going to get $1 in return. God says in the Bible that if you will give blessings, my blessings to other people that I have given to you, if you will share those blessings with other people, you will receive 100-fold blessings in return. But the bottom line is that's not the name of the game. The name of the game is blessing. God blesses us, we bless somebody else. God gives to us, and we share with somebody else. We have to open up our minds and our hearts to the possibilities. There is always an opportunity to share and to give. It doesn't make any difference what we're talking about. You don't have to share millions of dollars if you don't have millions of dollars to share. But if God blesses you with a few dollars, you certainly can share part of it in one way or another. You can help with food, you can help with laundry, you can help with dinner, you can help with medical bills. Sometimes you're a blessing to somebody just by being there and supporting them psychologically in love for the problem or the challenge that they are facing. That's a blessing too. We have all kinds of ways to bless the people around us. Don't ever think that there isn't a time when that's possible. And when we recognize that when we do that, God can work more wonders in our lives, and he will give us more so that we can bless them. Prosperity is not about dollars and cents. Prosperity is about the idea that you have in your mind. You can be prosperous and not have a penny in your pocket. God said he would provide all of your needs. Well, he probably does. Whether we recognize him as providing for our needs or not is another story. But if we open our eyes and open our hearts and we accept God's love and blessing in our lives and we share that love and blessing with someone else, then our lives will be pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And we will have more blessings than we can hope. We can be prosperous and still be penny poor. Prosperity is an idea. It's an idea that starts with God and materializes here inside of you. You have to intend to be prosperous if you want to be prosperous. Now I want to take time to do a little meditation. We've gotten to the point where we do the meditation sometimes after the message. And I thought this was a particularly good time for us to do a message or a meditation on prosperity. So I would ask all of you to get comfortable in your seats.